I don't know how to explain it, but every year when fall rolls around, I start hearing them again. The whispers. It's like the wind through the leaves is calling my name, reminding me that it's not over. I try to tell myself it's just paranoia. But deep down, I know better. I know because of what happened back in the fall of '98, when 5 of us went into the woods behind Hollow Ridge and only 2 came out. Back then, the stories about the ancient oak were just that, stories. It was supposed to be cursed, a relic of a druid's wrath from centuries ago. The tree was massive, its branches tangled like a giant's fingers clawing at the sky, and roots so thick they cracked the ground around them. We'd all heard the tales. If you stood too close, they said, you'd hear whispers, the voices of the lost. But we were teenagers, invincible. We thought we'd prove everyone wrong. So it was me, Mark, Dana, Jess, and Alex, all of us stupid, curious, and daring each other to get close. We reached the woods around dusk, the air already heavy and cold, like it knew what was coming. Mark was the first to step toward the tree, laughing like he was invincible. "It's just a tree," he said, grinning back at us. But the moment he put his hand on the bark, everything changed. The wind picked up, swirling leaves around us in a vortex of red and gold. It should have been beautiful, but it felt wrong, like the forest itself was breathing. Then came the whispers. At first, they were faint, barely audible beneath the wind's howl, but they grew louder, hundreds of voices, pleading, mocking, crying. I turned to run, but the ground cracked open, and roots shot up like living things, wrapping around Jess and Alex's legs. They screamed, and I tried to grab Jess's hand, but it was like trying to hold onto water. The roots dragged them down, the earth swallowing them whole. One second they were there, and the next, nothing but churned up soil. Panic surged. Mark and Dana were shouting, but I couldn't hear them over the wind and the voices. Shadows slithered along the roots, reaching for us. Mark, wide-eyed and desperate, tried to pull Dana away, but something in him snapped. "It's the tree," he muttered, over and over, eyes glazed. I grabbed Dana and we ran, tripping over roots, stumbling through the dark until we found ourselves back at the ancient oak again and again. No matter where we turned, it was waiting. By dawn, we collapsed at the edge of the woods, gasping for breath. Dana wouldn't speak. Mark was gone. I don't know if he was dragged back or if he went willingly. All I know is, when I went back months later, the tree was quiet, but etched into its bark were faces, twisted, tormented, familiar. I moved away, but every fall, I feel it. The ancient oak is still hungry. I know it hasn't forgotten me. They say every town has its ghost story. Ours was the Lantern Man. Supposedly, he was a farmer murdered for his land centuries ago, condemned to wander with a burning lantern in hand, seeking revenge. We all laughed at it. I mean, I was 16. Who cares about old stories? So when my brother Eric dared me to spend a night in the old farmhouse where the Lantern Man was last seen, I was all in. It was just another dumb dare, right? At least that's what I thought. The farmhouse was a wreck, crumbling walls, broken windows, and this smell of rot that stuck in your nose. We brought flashlights, snacks, even a camcorder to document our bravery. For a while, it was just us making fun of creaking floors and shadowy corners. But as the night wore on, the air grew thick and heavy, like the place itself was holding its breath. Around midnight, the fog rolled in, wrapping around the house. It pressed against the windows, and for a moment, I felt like we were trapped underwater. Then we saw it, a flickering orange glow in the distance. I wanted to laugh, to tell Eric it was some hiker or drunk wandering around, but I couldn't. The light got closer, and with it, a cold that made my bones ache. The door creaked open, slow and deliberate, and he stepped inside. The Lantern Man wasn't just a story. He was real, and worse than I could have imagined. His figure was like a living shadow, shifting and flickering. His eyes were burning coals, and the lantern he carried, it wasn't just light. Shadows poured from it, wrapping around everything it touched. I tried to run, but I couldn't move. It was like the air itself had turned solid. The shadows crept up my legs, cold and burning all at once. I could feel every regret, every cruel thing I'd ever done, being dragged to the surface. The Lantern Man didn't just haunt. He judged. Eric tried to speak, tried to beg, but the shadows were already around his throat. He clawed at them, his face turning red, then pale. His eyes met mine, desperate, terrified, before the shadows swallowed him whole. When I came to, it was morning. The fog was gone. The farmhouse was quiet, and Eric, he was a stain on the wall. A silhouette burned into the wood. No one believed me. They said it was an accident, that I'd lost my mind. But every fall, when the fog rolls in, I see that orange glow. I know he's still out there, still searching, and I know one day he'll come for me again. I've seen a lot of things in my life, but nothing haunts me like that damn cornfield in Thornwood. I took my son, Ethan, there one fall. Just another father-son day at the corn maze. It was tradition. But that year, the corn was different. It grew taller than usual, thicker, and had this sickly red tint. I tried to shrug it off, telling myself it was just a weird crop, but deep down, I knew something wasn't right. We paid our entry fee to old man Edgar, who'd run the maze since I was a kid. He looked at me with these tired eyes, like he was carrying a weight too heavy to bear. "Stay on the path," he said. I laughed it off. Bad move. The maze started out like always, laughing, chasing each other, pretending to be lost. But soon the paths narrowed. The corn pressed in on us, and the air felt thick and stale. I remember looking up and realizing I couldn't see the sky anymore. That's when I heard it, a low, rustling sound that wasn't the wind. I grabbed Ethan's hand, trying to tell myself it was just the wind. Then he screamed. I spun around, and he was white as a sheet, pointing at the corn. "It grabbed me," he whispered. I wanted to laugh, but I saw the stalks moving, not swaying, moving, reaching. We tried to leave, but every turn led us deeper. The rustling grew louder, like whispers echoing in a tunnel. We stumbled upon others, a couple, an old man, all screaming as roots twisted around their limbs, dragging them down. The ground opened beneath them, swallowing their screams. I tried to shield Ethan, but the corn was alive. Then it appeared, the spirit of the field, a twisted thing of roots, soil, and malice. It spoke with a voice like grinding stone. "The harvest is due." I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. It reached for us, and I thought that was it. But then Edgar came, swinging a scythe like a madman. "Run!" he shouted. I didn't need to be told twice. We stumbled out, breathless and shaking. By morning, the maze was gone, just an empty field. No one believed us. Every fall, when the corn turns red again, I hear the whispers. I know it's waiting, waiting for the next harvest.